Heads up, audio listeners, you are about to hear a videotaped conversation. For the full experience, you'll find a video version of this episode on Spotify or YouTube. So back in 1992, I was a college radio DJ. That summer, an indie rock album called Slanted and Enchanted came out, the full-length debut from the band Pavement. And like every other DJ, I was obsessed.
Ice, baby, I saw your girlfriend.
Their music was super catchy, sometimes achingly beautiful, but mostly fuzzy and murky, and so was their image. The front cover art was an arc of piano keys, painted over with splotches of what looked like whiteout. On the back cover, they identified themselves with cryptic pseudonyms like SM and Spiral Stairs. I imagined them as these Velvet Underground types, wearing sunglasses indoors. But then, I saw them on tour that summer, and they were hardly mysterious art rockers. The show was like sitting in on a stoner basement rehearsal. Frontman Stephen Malkmus would pass around beers mid-tune, stop songs halfway through. They had no interest in putting on a capital R rock show, and yet it rocked. And was funny, and transcendent, and sometimes kind of infuriating. And now, there's a movie about them. And it's perfect, because it's all the above. I'm Rico Galliano. Welcome back to the MUBI Podcast. MUBI's the streaming service that champions great cinema. On this show, we tell the stories behind great cinema. Today, a special bonus episode, my interview with Alex Ross Perry, director of Pavements, a postmodern gem of a movie that's really a bunch of movies in one. It's the straightforward story of a Pavement reunion tour, and three way less straightforward stories about the making of a Pavement stage musical, a Pavement museum show, and a Pavement biopic, all of them created for the movie with various levels of sincerity and absurdity. It's really fun, and it's streaming on MUBI now in the US, UK, Canada, and many other countries. I spoke to Alex Ross Perry before a live audience this past April after a screening of the movie at MUBI Fest in Chicago. We talked about the film, the band, and the time circa 2020 when their years-old song Harness Your Hopes suddenly went viral on TikTok and briefly messed up the movie. I introduced Alex like this. Ladies and gentlemen, the man of the hour, Alex Ross Perry.
Thank you.
It's very simple first question. When did you first hear Pavement? What was your first exposure to the band?
I think my first memory is hearing stereo on what would have then been called alternative radio, circa 1997.
And?
Well, it stuck in my head, and I really like Bright in the Corners, the album that song is on.
So you're late to the, for those who don't know, that's like their second to last album or something, maybe third to last?
Second to last. I guess that is late, but I was 10 when Wowie Zowie came out.
Yeah.
So not really,
Yeah.
But then by the time I was 12, whatever was on alternative radio was what I wanted. That's the huge difference between being 10 and 12 when you're listening to the radio. At one age, you don't go out and buy CDs. And this is, of course, in 1995 to 7. And then 2 years later, you go out and buy stuff.
So then when did you end up sort of working creatively with them, I guess?
So this started coming together in summer 2020.
This movie?
Yeah.
So this is before, I thought you were going to say the Harness Your Hopes video, which you directed.
Yeah, so that was mid-stride. That was something like, that was done in February 2022. So 2 years after outlining, researching, raising money for the movie, knowing that 2022 would be when we were going to shoot most of the movie.
Okay.
And shooting that video was, you could call it either proof of concept, a canary in a coal mine, day one of the movie. Mm-hmm. It was kind of all of those things, but it was just a way of starting the creative relationship. But then 3 months later, we were shooting the rehearsals, the reunion. So no, the movie was extremely underway when that video was made. It was just made as a sort of like, let's just put our arm around you a little bit further and you'll make this video.
I see. But so you started in 2020. What was the spark of meeting, getting put together with them, all that?
Well, it wasn't my spark, which is anomalous in anything I've ever made. It was their spark, and they did this thing that's very common now that every significant artist, musician, celebrity, whoever does, which is like how can we retell our story? How can we, what else can we make? We're not going to make another album. We're not going to make a lot of things, but we can make a movie. But we're a better band than most, and we need to make a better movie than most. We can't just do one of those streaming documentaries that covers A, B, C, and D with this interview. We get Thurston in there. We get Dave Grohl in there. We get all these people.
They're not the Eagles.
Yeah, like they just don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So I was encouraged to voice my interest in doing this by Danny Gabai, one of the film's producers, who had been approached by Matador along with the other producers. And he said, I think Alex would be really good for this. And I was excited and sort of grew from there very quickly. And by the fall, I was interviewing everybody and had sort of in the middle cleared the Malcolmist test of just get on the phone with him, talk about like what the movie won't be. Don't tell him he's talented. Don't talk about his band. Don't talk about how much you like his music. Don't talk about anything that makes him feel like he's important.
Did you know all this going into the conversation?
I was primed. It was just like, just keep it casual. Just like say why you don't want to make a cookie cutter movie and just tell him why it will be different. And he was just like, yeah, sounds good. And then I immediately started interviewing everybody and talking to the involved parties, which went on for 6 months of transcribing interviews. And mostly like the interviews were already like, I'm fishing for things in the interview of, I know I'm going to do a museum, so I'm saying to every participant, if the band's story could be told through objects, what objects would be essential for that?
Oh, interesting.
Second question, do you have that object?
But here's the thing. So you pitched in 2020, you were already pitching them something like the movie that we saw here with these kind of disparate threads of Pavement, Diana.
Yes, that was it. That was the idea. That was the initial idea. There's a couple, call them like strands that didn't ultimately happen.
Like?
Well, one of them didn't happen because the world of the band changed, which is that I had this idea of using archival video to tell a story about how the band slowly over the course of their incredibly acclaimed but commercially somewhat unremarkable career had planted these conspiratorial seeds and messages to a generation later have proven all along that when they came back for this reunion tour, this was the moment they were building towards. But then that actually happened via the TikTok success of Harness Your Hope.
Oh, that's right.
And to some extent the video as well.
So it was going to kind of be a Paul is dead type of thing?
Yeah, well, like a Room 237 type conspiracy thing of all these people saying like, no, you see, they said like, if you listen to this, it says like come 2020, 2021, this is when this thing will happen. And I thought this was a great way to use archival in a really stupid way that they liked. But then ultimately the world of the actual band and the culture caught up with that idea. And that idea wouldn't make sense anymore because that became text rather than a bit.
Wow. But you had the other three going on. The musical, the regular document, the museum, and the film. Yeah. Within a film.
And yeah, always from very early on.
Let's start. First of all, before we get into each one of those, I want to know, like, it makes total sense. I think anybody here, like, watching this is like, yeah, that's how you had to make this movie. But also why? Like, why is this the perfect way to do this band's story?
Well, I don't know exactly. I hope that it is. I guess, like, I don't know how to put this. Like, I'm a real consumer of this sort of movie. Not that, I mean, this to me is there is no other movie like this, but I'm like a real consumer of music documentaries and of music stories on film. I just really like watching them. And I think a lot of people do.
Yeah.
But I'm frustrated as a consumer of these that with very few exceptions, the form and content of the film in question does nothing to represent the form and content of the artist in question.
It's like a kind of blueprint that exists regardless of what the music or the band is.
Of course, an occasional transcendent film can do that. And I love those. And those are the exceptional ones that really rise above, like the Todd Haynes Velvet Underground movie, for example.
Right.
Which really does feel formally connected to what the experience of liking that band then and then since then would feel like. But the question just for me immediately, which I solved within a month of having this thought exercise, was what is the Pavement version of that? So you put on a Pavement album to just think and brainstorm, and it's a 2-minute pop song that's catchy, will be catchy forever. It's a 90-second punk song that's abrasive and feels like something that angry young guys would make. And then it's like a 6.5-minute long freeform jam that's like almost a song you want to skip. And I was like, the movie just has to be that feeling.
It feels like a pastiche, like their albums are pastiche.
Yeah, and they are. I mean, you look at the artwork that Malcolm has made, they're collages. You look at the sensation of a set list, it's disparate from the whole career. And I just sort of felt like the movie, whatever that is, the movie has to be that somehow. And then it's just an excuse to do other things that I like and be inspired by this core thought exercise that sort of frames the movie of like, which in 2020 was a concept. By 2024, when we finished the movie, was a fact of like, what if this band is so important and so successful that they warrant X, Y, and Z, which in 2020 was a joke. And everyone I was talking to knew, oh, that's funny, there'll never be a Pavement museum. Oh, that's funny, there'll never be a Pavement musical, and there'll never be a biopic. And there never would have been. Yeah. But by doing them, then it's like, but they did have that museum. So who's to say that it wasn't real?
I will also say, though, that there's something about Pavement, and it has been from almost the get-go, which is that part of the project is making great music that lasts, but part of the project has been talking about the ridiculousness of being a band, and particularly an alt-rock band. And I wonder if you got any sense from them as to why that has been part of the project for so long, because they're also clearly from this movie shaped by alt-rock. They love those bands. They love that music. They sincerely love it. So why do they also have to ironically like make fun of themselves for being part of it?
I don't really know. I just feel like the lyrics of a lot of these songs gave us permission to be extremely meta and clever, because from the very beginning, songs, Our Singer, Shoot the Singer, certainly Range Life, and Cut Your Hair on Crooked Rain, like
even Stereo, the first song you heard from them.
Yeah.
Listen to Me, I'm on the stereo.
Yeah, like it's part of the entire thing. But some of these songs are being written by like a 20-year-old who's experienced no fame, no success. And this is fascinating to me, and something that had to be embraced, but it sort of framed the meta-ness of the movie. There's a thing in the museum where we had from Malcolm's notebooks, like a thing he wrote. It's like film Act 3, Scene 7. Like I want to make an album while they're filming me, and I want to act like an idiot so no one knows who I really am. And we were like, yeah, that's great. Like we've been working on this movie for 2 years. We found this notebook page from 1996, and he's just like
predicted it,
validated our entire attempt at this. But
the question is why? Why do you think that was something that they embarked upon before fame was even a thing? Why was it so?
I think it's just to me, like growing up just after like the peak of when this kind of Gen X culture would have been the culture, but being someone who really has always loved it more than anything more contemporary to my own life, it's that combination of hyper intelligence, complete disinterest in embracing anything that is like centralized or normalized or mainstream, and needing to sort of rebel against everything by using your sophisticated slacker white boy intelligence to just like fight against everything, but do it by being clever and do it by laughing at everything. Putting quotation marks around everything was the way of embracing the world at this time for a young guy like him, or like, you know, a character like Ethan Hawke in Reality Bites, who I view as like a kind of cinematic Malcolmus adjacent type. Just like that kind of a guy who's like, I'm better than all of this and I'm smarter than all of you. But like, I'm not going to make a big deal about it. I'm just going to kind of like do my own thing and bounce around. And then everyone's like, that guy's cool.
It's true.
We love this guy.
But it also wasn't just that, like there was something going on. I mean, for those, I'm assuming that many of you in this audience were around for this time. That was like one of the key things in music at that time, was whether or not you were selling out. Like you had to think about it constantly. It was like the central point and meaning of being in a band somehow was that you weren't selling out. And so it's like somehow the industry was like part of your music from the get-go somehow. And I don't know what was happening at that time maybe that was making it so when it's not.
Yeah, well, in the movie, like they say, post Nirvana, there's this sort of rush of most likely to be signed.
Yeah.
So you understand that like from 1990, 1991 onward, there was blood in the water. And anybody would come sniffing around and say, we could really put some money into this band and take them to the next level. The music, the songs are there. The music proves it. But to me, if there's another band that what I'm about to say applies to, no one has yet told me them. Pavement, entire discography on the same record label.
Yeah, that's weird.
Unlike all these bands, there isn't the two albums on the small label, then the big one that had the one-hit wonder that you find in every 50-cent bin for 30 years, and then like the 3 shitty albums that come after that are just a disappointment even to fans. Like, to me, the beauty of what I saw when I looked at this band conceptually was 5 albums made with a fairly consistent lineup, certainly from the second one onward, same record label that they're with today, never took the bait, never did the thing, stayed at like a 5 out of 10 for an entire career. And then 25 years later, that 5 out of 10 is now an 11 out of 10 because everything else has sunk so far down.
Yeah.
And that consistency that they offered at the time that now younger fans get to experience. If you're 20 and you're coming to this band because of Harness Your Hopes, and many, many people are what I'm describing, there's nothing you have to look away from. There's nothing that you're like, yeah, but like, I wish I got to see that lineup when so-and-so was in the band. Or I really wish like, yeah, I went to the show and like they only played like the stuff I don't really care about. It's like, it's a very consistent and small thing that I think to new audiences just is so loaded with authenticity, because you can just tell in the body of work of those albums, there's not the compromise. There's Wowie Zowie is the opposite of a compromise. It's an intentional disaster. Right at the place in a discography where most bands have the overproduced, shitty major label album with the one-hit wonder that everybody at the shows can't stand.
Yep.
Instead, they go the exact opposite. And I think that measure of cleverness, sophistication, authenticity, which was done not strategically, but simply by just impulsively being true to yourself, 20 years later looks like the greatest career you could ever have.
Yeah. Well, but given that, tell me the spark of doing the musical version, which seems like literally the last thing that a pure band motivated entirely by art would do, is the Bucks musical. I mean, obviously you say in the movie that it's like, it'd be hilarious to take this music that's very ironic, but then at the same time, you also talk about how something about their music feels like it should be on stage more so than others. Why is that?
Yeah, well, I guess like as much as I'm saying I love going to the David Bowie exhibit, I don't love going to a jukebox musical, but just because I haven't. It's not that I don't love it because I've seen them and I hate them. I've experienced the Green Day musical, from which cast member Michael Esper comes, on YouTube only, because I never saw it. I would never bother to see it, even though Dookie was a seminal CD in my life, and Green Day were everything to me for a part of my teenage years. Yeah. I would never have bothered to go see it, not because I think it's an inherently flawed idea. It just doesn't make any sense to me. So therefore, I was like, I should do one of those as a way of figuring out like what is, and Catherine Gallagher, who's in the musical, was in Jagged Little Pill, the Alanis Morissette musical. Yeah. And it's less like I have anything to say about this that I, in character, don't say in the movie, where my entire idea was like, I genuinely think these songs, lyrics, and melodies would soar this way. Like, I really just had this belief that they would, and I wanted to use someone else's money to prove that.
It's very surprising to me, because when I came to this, I thought that would be the least sincere part of this movie. It's called Slanted! Exclamation point, Enchanted! Exclamation point. Like, it's winking from the beginning. But you really take it seriously, it feels.
Right. Well, you can't do a musical theater and take it not seriously, because the second you have open auditions and you get some musical theater nerds in there, there's nothing in the room but sincerity. Yeah. And this was fun for me, but
it is heartbreaking.
But that is to me one strand of Malkmus's work, is an aching sense of sincerity that he has deliberately hidden behind layers and layers of ironic sarcasm, which makes that sincerity something that fans maybe have to look for or find within themselves when they're listening to the songs. So I just, again, like that part of the movie and the biopic and the museum, so the whole movie really is like my questions about the way that something as simple as an indie band that at the time had never even sold a gold record, No 500,000 sales when we started making this. Those have only happened since because of Harness Your Hopes, which again took one of my best jokes out of the movie and made it real. But just, it's all a question of like, where is the line for how big or how small an artist has to be where that legacy can be chewed up, remonetized, and sold back to fans for generation after generation. Because we all know that there's multiple Bob Dylan musicals. There's been two. One that was a failure and one that's more recent that's kind of successful. There's the Tina Turner musical. Like, these things happen. These biopics happen. These musicals happen. These museums happen. My question was only like, I don't think there's a limit for how big or small an artist has to be for those to be valid artistic exercises. Even if the artistic exercise is making shit, in the case of these Hollywood biopics.
Let's talk about the movie within a movie, which I feel like you express much more irony towards that thread of the stuff that you came up with for this. First of all, to what extent does that exist in the world? I know that obviously there was some screening of something. There were reports of a screening of something. The reports, like, the details are scant as to what exactly it was. Like, is there a cut of the Range Life?
If you put everything, the Range Life script is 45 pages long. So most people would say that's what, like a 40-minute movie.
Yeah, it's like half a movie.
Yeah.
Half a feature.
Or, you know, it's or a quarter of these biopics, which are all 2 hours and 25 minutes.
For some reason.
So and what we edited together, we only, of those 45-ish pages, we filmed 20 of them on 35 in wardrobe correctly. The rest of the scenes that were either too complicated or that we couldn't afford to film, we filmed as table reads, which you also see in the movie.
Okay.
We cobbled all of that together and showed it with a little bit of the reunion tour. So all of Range Life, like, that has been filmed, everything with those actors, totals 50 minutes.
No.
But that includes, like, Joe going around getting into character, which we also showed. Like, we showed all of that stuff. Stuff that, far be it for me to say, nobody could look at and say was a completed film.
Okay, good.
Because there's in the movie, very rarely do you see a table read every fourth scene in a completed film.
Now, we see in the movie the talk back afterwards. The guys seem a little bit flabbergasted, or like dumb. They don't really have much to say. Later, Steve Malkmus did an interview with Vanity Fair where he seemed to express, he was like, it was a mess. Maybe it was a prank. Were they in on the joke or not? Like, did you tell them any of this was happening, or did you present it to them like a gift?
Well, Malkmus doesn't check his email. So the problem is that you can say something, but that doesn't mean that the message is going to be received.
So,
There's other members of this band who are the kinds of people, and again, I've had a great time making this movie with these guys. Your email comes back to you when you send it. You know, like the inbox is full kind of stuff. So sometimes things get lost in the mail, literally. But I would check that again because he had them print a retraction, and I'm very happy he did that because he wrote to me and he was like, my comments have been, as he says to the interviewer at 120 minutes, 20 years ago, you misunderstand me again. He said, I think this was a prank. And it's like, no, this was a fucking prank. Like, I said, we're going to do this as a joke. We're going to pretend everyone just watched a 2.5-hour movie. And I'm going to talk like we just watched, whatever. I was going to say like a good one of those, but nothing came to me in time.
yeah.
So it was just like, but again, for the framework of a movie that is both fiction and nonfiction, I desperately needed the scene where the fake movie is finished so that it has some sort of a payoff. Otherwise, Joe and his storyline just kind of fade into nothingness. Yeah, right. And a lot of these contemporary documentaries, which I enjoy, including the HBO, it was an Alanis Morissette one and a Tina Turner one, which I both liked, just because they were compelling portraits of interesting figures, and with those women attending their Broadway musical opening. And I was like, well, I can't get the guys to come to the musical opening because the timing doesn't work out. So we have to get that. I need that shot. I need that story beat somewhere. And it just became possible to make it that. A sociopathic person would look at that depiction of their life and be like, this is good and cool.
Yeah.
I love that they made this movie about me. And someone with integrity would look at this and be like, who would watch this horse shit? And that is these guys. And I respect that about them, because somebody like myself, or perhaps people out in the world, we unfortunately, we know the language of the hogwash biopic because hate watch, whatever, curiosity gets the better of you. We've seen these.
Yep.
None of these guys have seen any of these movies.
Really?
No, of course not. Why would they? They don't care. They're real musicians. They don't want to watch the idea of music and being a musician be tarnished by the Hollywood system in order to win awards. So they've never seen any of the things that we're sending up. And they were just like, why would people like think that scenes happened that way? Like, why would they think that like labels put the pressure on artists to like pick singles that way? And I'm like,
You make them seem like bumpkins, like from
right, but that's how those movies often figure. But it's really like, it was my solution to trying to narrativize. It's a 10-year career. Obviously, I'm neglecting the 2010 reunion and the more recent one, which are both fascinating codas. But 89 to 99, if that was the story you were telling, it's very narratively lumpen because the most dramatic, interesting part, if you're looking for a cliche story, is directly in the middle with what we dramatize. Wowie Zowie is a deliberate failure after Crooked Rain. Lollapalooza is very challenging. Everyone I talked to said that was the hardest time in the initial run of the band. For a narrative structure, that's a problem because then that ends and you have 5 more years. But for me, I was like, well, that's the part that would be the best part of a bad movie. So we'll just only make that part.
Sure. Well, I was going to ask you, like, which parts of the rock biopic did you feel were necessary? You just sort of answered that. But you picked the mud fight, the mud riot. I went and looked it up. I mean, it was a thing that really happened, but you like very cleverly juxtapose the doom that is ascribed to it in the fake movie to the backstage antics happening afterwards, where it's like, maybe that was just a stupid thing that happened one day and then they got over it. Like,
that's exactly what happened. That is quite literally what they've said happened. But that's the other thing, by split screening backstage antics of getting changed with the dramatic fallout. That's just our way of saying, like, when you watch these movies, when you watch whatever this year's will be, right? I remember what all of last year's biopics were. I don't know what's coming. There's the Bruce Springsteen movie, for fuck's sake. It's coming this year. When you watch these things, you don't actually think this is what happened, do you? Like, that's my way of, we put the split screen there to be like, when you see the dramatic moment with the music swelling in this movie, you don't actually think this happened. You don't think these words were spoken by this figure whose music you like, do you? Yeah. And we just had to, again, we had to look at what the band did with their songs, with Range Life, with the lyrics of that. And we just had to say, like, we're just taking a pot shot at this entire notion of fame and success and iconography and commodification of our story. And we just had to do what they did all those years ago, which is say, like, this is all kind of stupid. Well, but we're a little bit more clever than you, so we're going to just have some fun and run some circles.
But let me, last question for you. Despite that, I find myself very moved by this movie, like unexpectedly so, I will say. And as much as I've always loved Pavement, I don't know that I've ever felt like so seriously moved by them. And now when I listen to their music, maybe that is happening maybe because of this movie. But I'm asking you, why is it that people would be moved so much by this band that seemed to spend a lot of time when they were in their heyday sort of distancing themselves from you? Like, that was their point in a way.
Yeah, well, I think people are often very nostalgic for their own lives, and
guilty.
Perhaps you're finding yourself transported back to like a time where you held those CDs in your like college rock radio heyday or whatever you were doing at the time.
Yeah. No, you got it.
And that's what we're as you were like thumbing through Infinite Jest or something.
Probably.
And, to me, like, it's unexpectedly moving, but so is going to a Pavement concert when like the end hits and they're playing Fillmore Jive. And it's like, it gets unexpectedly moving. And I found that inspiration within the songs, and knowing that we had this musical element and knowing that we could construct a sort of super medley to end the story on that collapsed a decade's worth of songs into a medley, and that we could montage it, as I'd always sort of said we were going to do. To me, like, it just is a moving story, not because these 5 individuals, 6 now with Rebecca, and these 5 albums are inherently moving in the way that other music might be, but to me, making this movie was like, this is just an ode to this era that I loved and lived through most of. I mean, I lived through all of it, but I was aware of most of it. Yeah. Somebody like yourself, you probably lived through all of it. Yeah. And this era to me is so gone. And it's so lost, this era of the analog world where getting written up in a zine could break a band into the indie level mainstream. And they would stay there, and you had to fight with the sellout integrity, and you would do the videos, but they would be bad so that you didn't get too successful. Like, that era is so fascinating to me, and everything about the 90s of the clash against systems and money and art and individuality and marketing and all of it is just so gone. And to me, from the minute I started thinking of this, I was like, no band better represents that moment than Pavement. Like, there's bigger bands from the 90s, way bigger, way more successful, that don't speak to that moment at all. Weezer's first album was on a major label. Like,
oh, that's true.
Nirvana were on a major label. Like, eventually these stories don't add up. And to me, this story is very clean, but also it's just this beautiful ode to 89 to 99 is this, like, the end of that cultural moment where any of this stuff would have made sense. And whether they knew it or not, they were really writing that history in a way. And I kind of felt like it was just our job to cobble it together.
Thanks for bringing it back to life. Thanks for making us laugh and cry. Alex Ross Perry, everybody.
Thank you.
Alex Ross Perry recorded at MUBI Fest Chicago. Pavements is showing on MUBI right now in the US, UK, Canada, and other countries. Check the show notes of this episode for details. And that's the MUBI Podcast for this week. Follow us so you don't miss an episode, and while you're at it, leave a 5-star review wherever you listen, won't you? Great, let's roll credits. This show is written and hosted by me, Rico Galliano. Kira McEniff is our producer. Our assistant producer is Kat Kowalczyk. Ethan Urquhart edited this episode. Our theme music was composed by Yuri Suzuki. Thanks this week to Corey Wilson, Dylan Polachek, and Karina Lesser. This show is executive produced by me, along with F.A. Ceccarel, Daniel Kasman, and Michael Taka. And remember, to watch the best in cinema, subscribe to MUBI at mubi.com. Thanks for listening. Now go watch some movies.